Hi folks, welcome back. Thank you for watching. Please do hit subscribe if you haven't done so yet. It really does help when you do that. So today folks, this is an exciting video for me because this is new amp day. Now it's sat over my shoulder there, you'll have seen the title of the video, so there's no big surprises. This is the Dr. Z Z-Master. Now I typically don't play signature gear of other guitarists for no real reason, I just tend to prefer the standard issue stuff. But I've made a bit of an exception for this amp because this is the first official signature amp that Dr. Z has ever done. And it's not just anybody's signature amp, this is Joe Walsh's signature amp. Now I've been a big Joe Walsh fan for my entire guitar playing life and I've always adored his tone. So when I heard he was working on a signature amp with Dr. Z, who I'm a big fan of anyway, I knew this amp was always going to be pretty high up my hit list. Now, there's a few videos out there already about this amp, and Joe himself has told this story several times, so if you know what this amp is, what it's based on, why it came about, please feel free to skip to the playing. I'll put a timestamp on screen now to where you can do that. But for those of you who are interested, back in, I think, the late 60s, early 70s, Joe had a 1959, I think it was, Fender Tweed Bandmaster, which was essentially a lower cost version of the Bassman. It had 3 10-inch speakers rather than 4. It was a slightly older circuit in terms of components and how it was designed. So it was kind of like a sort of scaled down version of the Bassman. But Joe really loved it. It was his favourite sounding amp, and for whatever reason he ended up gifting it to Pete Townsend, who went on to record the Who's Next album with it. So Baba O'Reilly and all those great sounds on that album is Pete Townsend playing Joe Walsh's old Tweed 310 Bandmaster. And Joe always really regretted giving it away because he was never really able to get that tone back. So not too long ago, Fender reissued the 310 Bandmaster. Joe bought one and wasn't really happy with it because to him it didn't sound anything like his old 59 did. So he gave the amp to Dr. Z and asked him to kind of look at it and make some changes to make it closer to that original specification. So Z took it apart, worked out what Fender had done, what they hadn't done, worked his magic on it, gave it back to Joe, and he was a lot happier with it. But Joe had some suggestions of how the circuit could be improved or tweaked at least to kind of match his preferences and make it a little bit more modern day friendly. And that is essentially what this amp is. It's the culmination of that classic Tweed Fender Bandmaster circuit with Joe's suggestions and Dr. Z's fairy dust on the top. Now, there's a few things about this amp that have been changed from the original specification. And the first one is, instead of having 4 inputs where you kind of jump one channel to the next with a patch lead, that's all been done internally. So you have just 1 input, but 2 volume controls. Now, volume control 1 is basically the normal channel. It's a little bit darker and a little bit lower in gain. Volume 2 is a bright channel. So it's brighter, has a little bit more kind of rasp and hair on the top. But what's really cool about that is you can then use those two and balance them out as a kind of active EQ. Before you even touch the 2-band EQ and the presence control, you can just balance those 2 channels out. So you can bring in just the thickness on channel 1 for single coils, you can add some more high end for humbuckers using channel 2, and just be creative with how you balance them out. So that's really nice. On the front end, it now has 12 AX7s. Now, the old Bassman, I think it was 12 AT7s, maybe 12 AY7s, a much lower gain tube anyway, because the Bassman was originally a bass amp, and basses have a much hotter output than 6 strings, so the gain was dropped on the front end to keep the amp as clean as possible and stop it distorting. But it's really hard, according to Dr. Z at least, to get a very good reproduction nowadays of those old lower gain tubes. So he went with 12 AX7s and adjusted the circuit with a little bit more negative feedback to kind of balance out and bring the gain down a little bit so it kind of matches the original spec, but uses a 12 AX7. So you can go to any sort of tube shop and buy that very readily. So that's really convenient. He firmed up the output capacitors, so it now has a firmer response to it than the old Tweed amps typically do. And that is really, really nice. He said that that was primarily so it worked better with pedals. So if you boost into the front end, it doesn't just sag and fart out on you. But you can just dime this amp and it has that raspy, gnarly Tweed sound to it that we all know and love. But it doesn't have that kind of farty, saggy low end in a way that one of those classic old amps does. So you can hit a big chunky E power chord and it doesn't just go and sort of drop out. it takes it and it's really, really firm. So it's kind of a hybrid between like the Tweed sound, but the sort of low end response of like a blackface Fender, something like a twin. So it's a really nice kind of amalgamation of those two concepts. But the most interesting thing about this amp, which is true for the originals, is the output transformer is a 4 ohm output transformer. And Z went to Triad, who built the original transformers for Fender back in the Tweed era, and got them to completely clone that original 4 ohm output transformer. But in the Bandmaster, because it's kind of like a stripped down version, it only has 3 10-inch speakers, which are wired in parallel. Now, if you know anything about how to calculate impedance, if you have 3 8 ohm speakers in parallel, that's 8 divided by 3, which is about a 2.66 ohm load, connected to a 4 ohm transformer. So there's a mismatch there. And it basically causes the transformer to misbehave a little bit, saturate a little bit more, but in a really beautiful way. And that impedance mismatch is really key to the old 50s Tweed Bandmaster sound. So that is exactly what this amp has in it. It has that mismatch, which causes that really nice output transformer to kind of oversaturate a little bit, but in a really beautiful way. So that's essentially what this amp is. It's a kind of recreation with a few modern day tweaks of Joe's 59 Tweed Bandmaster. Now, today I'm not going to use any pedals into this amp. I might make a separate video at some point in the future showing how it does take pedals, and spoiler alert, it takes them really well. But this is an amp that just loves to be cranked up really loud. So today I'm going to use a selection of different guitars, set the amp everything from clean all the way through to maxed out and all the sort of goodness in the middle, and just show you the core sound of some classic vintage spec guitars going into this amp, because it is just absolutely phenomenal. I've had this amp for a couple of weeks now. I've held off making this demo mainly to break the speakers in because it was new, but also to get to know it, because I'm a British amp guy and a 12-inch speaker guy, not a Fender amp 10-inch speaker guy. So it's really different to what I'm used to. So I wanted to really get to know it before I tried to put this video together. But having kind of learnt it and found the sweet spots, it is just absolutely divine. So without further ado, guys, here we go. So there we are, folks. Now please do comment underneath, let me know what you thought of the Z Master today. I love chatting nerdy guitar stuff with you folks in the comment sections. Now to me that is just a magic sounding amplifier, but as I said at the start of the video, it's a very different experience for me because I'm a British amp guy and a 12-inch speaker guy. not a Fender amp guy and a 10-inch speaker guy. So when I first plugged into this amp, it took me by surprise somewhat because it was so different to what I'm used to. But having got to know it for the last couple of weeks, I'm pretty much loving everything about it. It sounds absolutely phenomenal. Now, I think my favourite thing is the top end on it. It has this kind of halo of presence and glassiness that never seems to get too much, regardless of what you throw at it or how you set it. And having the low end response firmed up is absolutely amazing because it has that raspy, gritty, sort of grainy tweed breakup that we know and love. But I deliberately set both volume controls at maximum and was hitting big, chunky, idiot low E chords with a Les Paul to try and make it sag. And it does sag a little bit in a way that most tube amps do. It has a lovely feel to it, but it doesn't just go and fart out on you like a tweed amp usually would. So I'm loving that firmed up response. Now, with non-master volume tube amps, most people just want to hear it absolutely dimed, which is what I've done today. If you would like me to make another video showing you how it takes pedals and how it responds, I'll gladly do that if the interest is there, but I know most people just want to hear it turned up really, really loud. So thank you ever so much for watching, folks. Please do let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments section. I'd love to get them from you and see what you think of the Z Master, because I'm just absolutely loving it. So I hope this video was interesting and useful, folks. Please do carry on subscribing. I know I always say it, but it makes a huge difference when you do that. I'm now going to go and play this amp because I can't get enough of it, and I will see you very, very soon. Bye-bye.